Michael Gindi, Le'ilui Nishmat, their beloved father, Mr. Joe Gindi, Joseph Gindi, alav shalom, Yosef ben Nisha, which I remember him vividly in my early days here at the Edmond J. Safra Synagogue. He was doing a lot of good things for the Kahal Kadosh in so many ways, especially when it came to the department of the Hesed, of the discretionary distribution of funds and the kupot and everything connected to the Sarche Aniye Bet Israel. Additionally, today's class graciously sponsored by Jose Safdie and family. Le'ilui Nishmat, his beloved father, Askana Siburi, Obadiah ben Bahir, and his uncle, Yaakov Koko ben Bahir. Yiratzon that to the words of Torah Berachot, their neshamot have an aliyah in Gan Eden. Amen. So yesterday, I got a lot of good feedback on the way, on the novel approach of the Hirat Hashem, which I make sure today to have it with me to continue explaining how the mitzvah of the Parah Adumah really, even though it seems to be on the surface, has a particular mitzvah that is impossible to be performed nowadays, nevertheless, the hidden messages of the Parah Adumah are actually the foundation of all of our mitzvot of the Torah. So I gave you some insights yesterday. Be'ezat Hashem, we're going to be discussing today a couple of elements as well. So here he brings a very powerful concept. Remember yesterday when we started to dissect the pasuk that says para, which literally means a cow, we quoted the Mishnah that we recite every day of our life. There is a very famous Mishnah in Masechet Pe'ah that brings the following statement. Elu devarim she'en lahem shi'ur. These are the following commandments that do not have an exact measurement from the Torah. And the second half of the Mishnah says, Elu devarim she'adam oseh otam, ochel miperotehem ba'olam hazeh, ve'akeren kayemet le'olam haba. There are a different group of mitzvot that a person does them in this world. The person receives the benefit in this world, but the main reward it's remaining after 120. When it comes to the topic of Chaya Olam Haba, Mashiach's arrival, Gan Eden, etc. So the Mishnah, that's what the Mishnah says. So explains here that when it comes to the mitzvot of the Torah, we have two groups of mitzvot. Yesterday we discussed how the mitzvot are labeled. Edut, testimony, Hukim, decree that we don't understand the reason, and Mishpatim, mitzvot that the brain will do even without being a mitzvah. So then why does it become a mitzvah? Short answer. Ratzah Kadosh Baruch Hu lezakot et Israel, lefichach irba lehem Torah mitzvot. Is something that we say daily, that Kadosh Baruch Hu wanted to give the reward to the Jewish people, therefore increase in the concept of the benefits of Torah learning and the performance of the mitzvot. Let me bring a very simple example. A person comes to the synagogue, right? What is the actual mitzvah of coming to the synagogue? Coming to pray. That's basically coming to pray. But do you know that there is a couple of extra bonuses when a person comes to the synagogue? Number one, the fact that a person came to the synagogue, walked to the synagogue, drove to the synagogue. That's one department. Another one, a person takes a shower or a person goes to the restroom and clean themselves internally. That's another component of the mitzvah. A person comes to the Bet Knesset clean, presentable. The body doesn't have any outside smell that is problematic to the concept of praying. So guess what? You got to take a shower in the morning and you have in mind, I'm going to take a shower before I'm coming to the synagogue. We adding the shower to the mitzvah of coming to the synagogue. You walk Every step, synagogue. You use the restroom to make sure your body is clean, because the pasuk says that even the internal organs must be clean before a person prays. Kala asmotai toman Hashem kamocha, kol kerobai Hashem kocho. All these pesukim talk about the inner organs, usually connected to the digestive system of the person. So look, now going to the bathroom became a mitzvah. Getting dressed properly became a mitzvah. Taking a shower became a mitzvah. Go see the Pelei Yoetz that says preparations for a mitzvah makes up for the mitzvah. Let me ask you a question. Why do we need to be rewarded for going to the bathroom? Why do we need to be rewarded? Imagine yourself. Let's put a simpler example. A person comes to school, okay, and your grade is not the best. Your report card says C grade, SC. C is yani average passing grade, but you want to do the A. You want to go A. So what the teacher does, if you come on time, I give you an extra quarter point. If you do your homework every day, I give you an extra quarter point. If you come clean with the uniform, we used to have uniforms. When I mean uniform, I don't mean the uniforms of today's. Talking about real uniforms with a blazer, light blue shirt, gray pants, tie. Argentinian had a European influence in the topic of education. That's in high school. In elementary school, was very close to it, plus an apron. We used to wear an apron from first to seventh grade. Kindergarten, blue apron for the boys, a pink apron for the girls. That's how the word uniform it was back then. So the teacher says, because you did your homework, because you came on time, because you were proper behavior in the classroom, because you came every day with a clean uniform, I'm giving you from a C, I'm giving you a B plus. Unbelievable. Does it make sense? It doesn't make sense, because you're supposed to come on time, you're supposed to wear the uniform, you're supposed to behave in the classroom, you're supposed to do your homework, but the teacher wants to help you, so therefore even on the requirements, it became like grade for not breaking a window in the classroom. That's what this Mishnah says. That Mishnah says, Ratzah Kadosh Baruch Hu lezakot et Israel. Hashem wants to give us more and more zechuyot. Lefichach irba lehem Torah mitzvot sheneemar, the way we do. But now comes with an additional hidush. The hidush is what's coming next, not the next statement, but after. The mitzvot also are divided into two essential groups. Ben Adam lahavero, Ben Adam lamakom. The mitzvot between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the person, and the mitzvot between people. Interesting enough, and now comes a fascinating hidush, and it says, mitzvot sheben Adam lamakom nirmazim b'shem Moshe Rabbeinu. It says the mitzvot connected directly to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is connected through the essence of Moshe. Where do we learn this from? A pasuk. Moshe ala el Elohim. Moshe went up kaviyachol to Shamayim. So that means that the mitzvot that connects us to Shamayim are connected through Moshe Rabbeinu. Mitzvot ben Adam lahavero b'shem Aharon HaKohen. But the mitzvot among people is connected to the essence of Aharon. Why? I believe the Kahal knows the answer coming up. Aharon was Ohev Shalom, Berodem Shalom. Aharon was the master peacemaker among the people. So therefore, the mitzvot connected to humans is the mitzvot with Aharon HaKohen, and the mitzvot connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu are connected to Moshe Rabbeinu Alav Shalom. And therefore it says, the mitzvah of the Parah is connected to two elements of the mitzvot. Part of the mitzvah of the Parah Adumah is the concept of connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu through the mitzvot Ben Adam LaMakom, and the other part of the mitzvot is connected to Ben Adam LaHavero. What this Pirush says is that don't think that doing one of them it's good enough. The Torah is actually telling us, no, you need to do both. In other words, you cannot say, oh, I pray with the minyan, I eat kasher, I observe Shabbat, but I curse people. God forbid. I'm not honest in business. So starte desastre. That's what it says here. It says, don't think that it's a multiple choice concept. Oh, I like this mitzvah, therefore I do it. I don't like this mitzvah, therefore I don't do it. No, it says, the Yirat Hashem says that both elements of the mitzvot connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the mitzvot connected among people, is what truly makes the essence of a Yehudi. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam שהכל נהיה בדברו. Okay. Some of these elements and the messages I already discussed this yesterday. Just one moment. Okay. We discussed the first half. We discussed the second part. Okay. One thing that he brings, which I did mention this yesterday towards the end of the class, when we discussed the 17 requirements of the Sefer Haredim, at the end we said, Asher lo ala aleha ol, that the mitzvah should not become a burden, meaning to say, let me just get it over with, let me get rid of it. It says the opposite. Sarich lekayem et ha-mitzvah besimcha uvtuv levav. One of the top requirements that we shared yesterday with the Kahal was how the mitzvot to be done with joy. And I don't think that the topic of joy is the topic of today, of the topic of simcha, but how many times throughout our Torah and the Tehillim and the Nevi'im and the Ketubim, we make so much emphasis in simcha. I bring only one example that to some may sound extreme, but it's not extreme. The opposite is extremely easy. Not extreme in a negative way, but I must tell you the negative to understand the positive. Usually, before Rosh Hashanah, we read Perashat Ki Tavo. Perashat Ki Tavo contains 98 tohachot. 98, let's call them warnings to the Jewish people. I hope and pray that all of them already happened. That's my personal wish, and I think that everybody agrees to this. But remember that towards the second half of the Tohachot, the Torah suddenly tells us why all these things will happen to the Jewish people. And the Torah uses a language that is very easy to understand. And the Pasuk says, Tahat asher lo avadata et Hashem Elokecha besimcha u'tov levav merov kol. It says, due to the fact that we did not serve God with happiness and gladness of our heart when we had the possibility to do so. This happened in the time of Mordechai and Esther. Let's go back a minute to Mordechai and Esther. What was the straw that broke the camel's back that allowed Haman and Ahashverosh to plot against the Jewish people worldwide? Remember this. The threat of Haman was a very ambitious crime against Bnei Israel, and the Pasuk says, Le'ashmid, laharog, ulabed, to exterminate, to slaughter, and to wipe out all of the Jewish people, men, women, children, young adult, one day. Plus looting. Plus looting, ושללם לבוז. Now, what was the straw that broke the camel's back? So we need to be honest. The drama of the Jewish people didn't begin with the story of Haman and Ahasuerus. It began from the time of Nebuchadnezzar, that the Jewish people already were involved in idolatry and bowed down to Nebuchadnezzar, etc. But as I said before, the straw that broke the camel's back was participating in a party in which Mordechai HaSaddiq said to Bnei Israel, don't go. Don't go. It's like a Gentile invites you to a December 25th party. Can you go? No. Can you go to January 1st party? No. Many people do it. Doesn't mean that what people do it's right. That's it. Doesn't make sense to go to the December 25th. Doesn't make sense. But that's basically what Ahasuerus was doing. What was Ahasuerus' party all about? Celebrating the exile of the Jewish people. Celebrating the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Celebrating that the prophecy of the 70 years of Galut did not materialize. It's like you celebrate Hamavdil, Hitler's birthday. No difference. Who was the teacher of Hitler? Haman. They both shared the same plan. Haman was much more ambitious than Hitler, Imach Shema. Because Haman wanted to do it in one day. Beyom Echad. In one day, the Megillat Esther says. Hitler says no. It's too much. That's why when the Greeks came, prior to the miracle of Hanukkah, what they said, you know what they said? We're not going to repeat the mistake of Haman, wanting to destroy the entire Jewish people in one single day. Too much. We're going to do it slowly. How? Assimilation. Assimilation. That's why the restriction of the Greeks were about mikveh, against mikveh, Shabbat, Torah, Rosh Chodesh, Berit Milah, holidays, Torah prohibition. They figured if I take away mikveh, Berit Milah, Torah, Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh, holidays, what tefillin, what else do you have? Nothing. Khalas. And the handful of the mitzvot that are not included in that decree are a wonderful mitzvot. But that doesn't mean those are mitzvot that guaranteed the existence of the Jewish people. So they figured, okay, it may take us 2 generations to assimilate the entire Jewish people. Who was the originator of that idea? Parah. When Parah says, get rid of the boys, but save the girls, he figured, I get rid of the boys, we slice the Jewish people in half. I keep the girls, 2 things may happen. Either they'll never get married, and therefore there is no continuation of a nation. Or number 2, they will marry Egyptians and they will assimilate. So sooner or later, the plan was there. So look, we went through 2,000 years of history with the same goal. Destroy the Jewish people. Destroy the Jewish people. Today is a different ballgame. That the attacks are only physical. It's half of the battle is already won. Because the Torah continues. The learning continues. The mitzvot continues. Nobody prohibits you to do mitzvot and to learn Torah. Nowhere in the world. And in the isolated places, it's minuscule, it's diluted compared to the greatness of the Torah and the mitzvot and the synagogues and Torah floating. There was never in the history of the Jewish people so much Torah learning an awareness like today. Back then, you didn't have a book, you didn't learn Torah. Today, you have a Habruta on the phone. You have Habruta in the Zoom. You go to iTorah, you get Shiurim non-stop, all day long. Baruch Hashem. Comes here, and the Torah writes, V'simcha u'tuv levav. The mitzvot can only bring the power of the mitzvah when the mitzvah is done in a good spirit. Even when you cook, the food comes out different. If you're happy when you're doing it, or you're doing it lehem atzavi. You inject the anger inside of the food. It affects the person. So he goes here further, and it says as follows, that the mitzvah, the more beautified the mitzvah is, the more benefit the mitzvah brings. When I mean benefit, I'm not talking about, the financial benefit. Forget about that. Talking about that the mitzvah actually influences the person. Sometimes people say, I pray every day and nothing happens. Of course, if you do your Amidah in a minute and a half, I don't think nothing is going to happen. I heard a story that one rabbi was answering someone this question and asked him, when you pray, where you pray? From the cell phone or from your siddur? The fellow said, Rabbi, cell phone for sure. Is it a kosher cell phone? No. So it means that you're not praying from a kosher source. You're praying from the same screen that you're watching TikTok and YouTube. So what do you think it happens to the tefillot? Don't take it personal. Don't laugh. I see everybody's nodding the head. You should have two cell phones. One for tefillah, if you need. I was so impacted by this story of the rabbi that what I did was I bought myself a Minhan Arvit packet size prayer book, miniature packet size. So when I go to a wedding or to a simcha, I have Minhan Arvit from the book. You see everybody looking at the cell phone. They're watching a baseball game 5 minutes before, 5 minutes later. I'm not telling you to get rid of your cell phones. Sometimes it will be good. Even the American school system today is fighting against cell phones. And they're making laws in certain states. I don't think it's finalized yet. That is mandatory that the students turn in the phone when they come into the school, and they get it at the end of the school, because they're realizing that students are becoming less and less social. They don't know how to interact with people. They bury themselves in technology, which there is nothing wrong, believe me. Has a lot of pluses. But I think that we need to reinforce the topic that a person prays from a siddur. Prays from a siddur. Again, it could be extreme circumstances, you're in the airport, etc. I'm not saying that I'm such a tzaddik neither. Sometimes if I'm at the airport and I don't have my koracha next to me, which barely happens, but let's say that occasionally maybe, and they're doing me on the other side, okay, I may use it. But to use it as a way of life, I'm not sure if it's spiritually beneficial for the prayer. I'm not talking about the person now. I'm talking about for the sanctity of the prayer. I remember this story happened in Argentina, maybe 50 years ago, or maybe 48 years ago. There was a rumor that there was a print shop that was printing Siddurim, and on Shabbat. Yani the Jewish owner, not Shabbat observance, but was printing Sidurim. And they put a hold on this book's edition. I'm not going to tell you the book's company, not to put anybody on the spot. And I remember that for almost a year, this Sidurim will put on the side. And someone, I heard the story from one of our teachers, asked the Hakam, or one of the Hakamim, I don't recall exactly who was it, what's the big deal? So the rabbi said that if a Sidur or a Torah book is printed on Shabbat, Has v'Shalom, not only the mitzvah goes nowhere, the power of the tefillah, it's already diminished for being made on Shabbat. That's why you open up a lot of books, what they say, nitfas, right here, nitfas al yedeh neyar chutz la'aretz she'en bo hilul Shabbat, printed with imported paper that was not manufactured on Shabbat. Because the paper has an influence. If God forbid this was printed on Shabbat, what effect can have? You understand? Now you may say, what's the big deal? It's a big deal. When you write a Sefer Torah letter, whenever you have a Sefer Torah dedication, and the sofer is sitting, and he tells you, hold my hand and repeat with me, Hareni kotev leshem kedushat Sefer Torah. Why do you have to say this? I'm hereby writing for the mitzvah of writing a Sefer Torah. Because if you did not have the kavanah, you cannot write it. The kavanah is like a get. Somebody asked me the other day, I don't understand, Rabbi, why to write a get takes so long and to do a ketubah is so quick. You can fill up a ketubah if you know what you're doing only. Not everybody knows what they are doing. Many times I have to fix problems of others, huge mistakes in ketubot. But today is not the topic. And Baruch Hashem, we have a couple of rabbis, experts in this field, especially when it comes to the names, to the dates, to the location, how to write a city, Sephardic version, Ashkenazic version. It's a lot of differences, etc. But when it comes to a get needs to be written from A to Z, lishmo, lishma, ulshem girushin. In other words, every step of the get procedure, the sofer says, I'm hereby about to write a get for Mr., let's call him Abraham ben Moshe, for example, and Mrs., let's say a fictitious name, Sara bat Mazal, for the sake of Kiddushin. Every step needs to have the name. That's the meaning of Lishmo, Lishma, for his sake, for her sake, and for the sake of the mitzvah. Ketubah is different. Why? Usually you write a ketubah for a happy occasion. Usually marriage is happy, at least in the beginning. What happens afterwards, I don't assume responsibility. I'm dealing now with a case, somebody got married, in the Shiva Berachot they're getting divorced. Crazy story. In the week of Shiva Berachot, out. Reason? Personalities. Verbal abuse. That's it. Out. So they called me up to put out the fires. I said, I don't understand. Baruch Hashem, I was not involved. I wasn't around. I was out of town when I was approached. I said, I don't understand. You didn't do research. You didn't see anything during the dating thing. Yeah, we thought, but it's maybe, okay, one time. Already before the engagement, there was hazakah, that there were plenty of red flags. around. Hashem should give them peace of mind to both of them to finish it peacefully, because sometimes people go to war for this, and there is nothing, zero. No Shiva Berachot finished, no marriage, no home, nothing, no assets. But it's painful that young people get divorced so fast. Hashem Irachem Aleinu. So let's go back. So it says here that the parasha actually in Kitavot says that the mitzvot have the power, the Gemara writes in Masechet Sotah, to bring not only the merit of the mitzvah, but to bring the mitzvah with all the benefits that the mitzvah can bring upon the person. What are the benefits? I don't know. I don't have an answer. And I don't think that anybody does have an answer. Sure, we know a couple of mitzvot can bring a benefit to the person, but the purpose is not the benefit. The benefit is a bonus. The benefit of the mitzvah is that we are able to strengthen our bonding with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's part of the performance of the mitzvot. Sometimes a person, doesn't have this connection, and he start looking for things. Sometimes the solution is in front of us. Do the mitzvah with a bit of happiness. Do the mitzvah with excitement. Learn Torah with someone. That was one of the requirements that Sefer Haredim taught us yesterday. That learning Torah by yourself is wonderful if you're not doing anything else. But the true way that a person benefits and absorbs the Torah is when the Torah is learned in a class setting with other people, that there is interaction, back and forth, etc. Now, finishes the Sefer Irat Hashem and talks about suddenly marriage. Now, I ask you, what has to do marriage with the mitzvah of the Parah Adumah? The Parah Adumah, right, means to purify someone that is impure. So why marriage suddenly is brought into the picture? Listen to the Hidush. The Pasuk writes, Tzarich le'ashgiach al ishto kegufo. Says, number one, he quotes the Gemara, and it says as follows, Me'aheva kegufo, umchabeda yoter migufo. Says, when it comes to marriage, the Gemara writes, you love your wife like you love yourself, and you honor her more than what you do for you, because the kavod of a woman is much higher than the kavod of a man. Now, comes the pasuk and it says, "Untatem ota el Elazar akohen." You will give the Parah Adumah through Elazar, not through Aharon, but through Elazar. And the question is, why through Elazar? So it says, Elazar remez laisha. Elazar is connected to the sanctity of marriage. Let's split the word Elazar, El-Azar. The Almighty helps. That's the meaning of Elazar. And the Gemara, the Rashi brings it down back then in Sefer Bereshit, quoting the Pasuk, E'aseh lo ezer kenegdo. So how the wife is called? Ezer. Ezer means a helper, meaning to say that a home is truly built through the sanctity of marriage. That sometimes there are situations in a marriage, of course. But the ultimate idea of marriage is to bring Kedusha into the relationship. So it says, La'azor leba'ala. It says that husband and wife, besides all the physical and materialistic and emotional matters that happen in a normal relationship of marriage, but through the holiness of marriage, the husband can become a Kohen. Now, what does it mean that the husband can become a Kohen? So, The meaning here, excuse me, the meaning here of a Kohen doesn't mean that suddenly the husband is going to go to the Duhan and he's going to say, Yevarechecha. No. What's the idea of a Kohen? Getting closer to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So what the Yirat Hashem says is something that we quoted maybe yesterday or the day before, or even on Shabbat. One of the stages of marriage under the Chuppah, it's called Kiddushin. Ede Kiddushin. When the Hatan gives the Kala the ring, what does the Hatan say? Hariat Mekudeshet. I don't want to finish the sentence. Mekudeshet. What's the meaning of the word Hariat Mekudeshet? You are sanctified. At that moment, husband and wife become a single entity and they help each other to become the true soulmates. They polish each other like the diamonds that we mentioned on Shabbat to the Hatan and the Kala. So the Kiddushin can only be done through marriage. That's why a man that is not married is not considered a full creation. Right, that's what the Gemara writes. Shalui belo Torah, shalui belo Tova, shalui belo Simcha, lo nikra Adam. Why the Gemara says a man not married is not called a man? Has v'shalom, you are a man, obviously, physically and spiritually. But in order for the person to truly bring out the potential that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the person, marriage, it's a requirement. Rabbeinu, I'll finish with this. Rabbeinu Chaim Vital quotes Rabbeinu Ha'ari that says the following. One of the main concepts or ideas of getting married, which is mentioned in the Torah several times, and bringing children to the world, which is the way that this stage in life can happen, is only for the goal that the husband and wife, not only that we supplement each other, but they help each other to bring out their true potential in life. Because when a person is single, he doesn't really care about others. A person that is single usually thinks on themselves. But once a person is married, the person says, no, now I have to give a good example to my children. Now I need to be cautious before I talk, the way I talk to my wife, the way I respect my in-laws, the way I give an example to my kids at home. And those thoughts, which are all good and positive thoughts to have, slowly but surely are able to reshape the rough person that a person was, and through marriage, they become more polished. And the same thing happened to the wife. Don't think that it's a one-way street. That's why the first requirement when it comes to weddings, in the Shiva Berachot we say, Ahava. What's the meaning of Ahava? Love. But why love? It's called Ahava. Short answer, because the word Ahava comes from the Aramaic word have. Have means give. Have, give. So marriage is about giving. That's why the husband, in the Kabbalistic terms, it's called mashpia, the influencer, the ones that gives. And the wife is the recipient. It's called mekabelet. She receives, the husband gives. But the books of Shalom Bayit, putting what I just said on the side, they concentrate on the word have. It says, any time that a spouse gives to the other, gives respect, gives kavod, gives loves, this affection, Shlomo HaMelech gives a guarantee return. Kamayim hapanim el hapanim, kelev ha'adam el ha'adam. It says, very simple. Mirror image. The mirror image. A person looks at the mirror. What happens when you look at the mirror? The mirror gives me a picture of what's in front of the mirror. If I smile at the mirror smiles back. If I put a long face of Tisha B'Av on the mirror, automatically that's the face that is going to reflect. That's what Shlomo Melech speaks about interpersonal relationship, and especially when it comes to the topic of Ben Ish Leishto, in the relationship between husband and wife, which is part of the Perot. Remember that I began the class by telling you the mitzvot that carry extra bonus credit. One of them is Ashkamat Bet HaKnesset, coming to the synagogue on time. Habat Shalom Ben Adam LeHavero Uben Ish LeIshto, making peace between people, making peace between husband and wife. By the way, the making peace comes in two stages. Not only that somebody becomes like an intermediary and creates respect and love between each other, but also when the person themselves, the husband or the wife, are willing to be mevater, are willing to yield and not to make a big deal out of things, that alone, that is helping to preserve the peace and the harmony and the calmness in the home, in the relationship. Also the person has the zechut to be a recipient of Hashem's bountiful blessings. Tiskul mitzvot, everybody. Have a great day. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen. Rabbi Hananiah ben Akashia